You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast, and as usual we delve and dissect horror movies across the board, be it classic, be it new. So I have the distinct privilege of speaking with director Dwayne Labbe, who is the director of this new feature that's coming out that will be screening as part of a night of horror film festival in Sydney, Dendy, Newtown. It's called Musclecar, and it will be screening on the 2nd of December at 9 p.m. Welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast, Dwayne.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for coming on board. And I'm looking at you right now, and you are sitting next to your producer for the film too, and I will introduce you as well, Aaran Creece. Welcome, Aaran.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be welcomed.
Thank you very much. So, look, this is really quite an exciting thing to be involved with a night of horror film festival. People that aren't familiar with it out there that's listening, it's basically, I want to say it's 6 nights of dedicated horror films, short films, within the horror realm, and this is a feature film that's going to be presented on, as I said, the 2nd of December. But before we come to discuss Musclecar in particular, I kind of like to chat with the directors about their journey in the film industry, so people can kind of get a bit of a background of how you've come to or work through your journey up to the point of making Musclecar. And when I'm looking at your list, Dwayne, it's a hefty list you've got there of work you've been doing. I've written down here that you began primarily in animation, and I wanted just to know how did that actually come about? You know, your journey into animation, and how do you feel that art form has transitioned or affected your creation over the years?
Well, I've basically drawn my whole life just for fun. I never thought I'd have to get paid for it. And I did my HSC, all that kind of stuff. And then in my first job, everyone wanted me to draw little pictures for them, and I did. And everyone said, "You're wasted here. Why don't you go and work drawing it?" And the only place I could find that would take people on was Hanna-Barbera in Sydney.
Yes, right.
And I never thought I'd be good enough to work there, but anyway, I was. So I worked there for 4 years. Yeah, doing a lot of cartoons, like Luke, Popeye, Bernstein Bears, Fred Flintstone specials, and Yogi Bear specials, and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I worked for Disney, doing Scooby-Doo. I did Scooby-Doo, Scrappy-Doo, and all that.
Yeah. For those that are listening, I can see you are sporting a fine Scooby-Doo T-shirt there.
Scooby.
Ruby Roo.
I don't think I've ever watched a Scooby-Doo cartoon in my life.
Oh,
when you draw them, you don't watch them.
Yeah, I can understand. Like
if you were a lawnmower, you wouldn't go home and look at your lawn.
Oh.
I did Disney, and then I was doing Warner Brothers commercials for started off as the Pacific Rim, all the countries that the Pacific Ocean, and then became worldwide doing that.
Yeah.
And it's just the trouble with Australia is really hard to get anything funded that's worth looking at. It's very cheap, nasty stuff that just, it's sad. But and it's a lot of work, and you got to try to sort of convince a lot of people that the budgets are worth it. You know what I mean? So for me, I just got tired, and the industry was folding, and a lot of people were sending our work to cheaper countries that could do it, a lot more.
Sure. Yeah.
Quality wasn't there, but in the end, you just got to watch TV and go, it's the quality doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
We watch as kids, and there's not really much passion or soul in anything. So I thought, well, I'll do live action because it's so much easier to film someone move their arm than to plan or it in between it, colour it, film it. I mean, composite it. It's just so much easier to do live action. So
yeah.
But I could use storyboarding skills, animation skills to plan shots that are at least a bit more than your average straight-on shot or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say that because obviously, a lot of filmmaking is primarily starts with the storyboarding, and it does make perfect sense to have an animator kind of lead that and direct that, because you have a certain vision and a style anyway. I mean, that transcends anyway in the film Musclecar. It's evident on the screen your specific style.
Got a chance to tell a picture the best possible way. So you do all the mistakes in your head, so that the composition's there, the whole everything is there. So it's the most visually stimulating you can make it, I guess. Because the chance to do it, so you might as well.
So, like, look, you mentioned that you did some time working on the Disney projects, and I've written down here that you did like Darkwing Duck, and I wrote down Bonkers because I remember watching that as a kid.
Bonkers, I did that, yeah.
Far out, I love that show. And Aladdin and Jungle Book too. But how did you become involved with working for Disney? And
I was actually the first Disney animator in Australia, so I did.
Yeah.
So basically, they realised there was a lot of good, talented people out here working at Hanna-Barbera, and so they basically wanted to capitalise on that whole staff, and we did a bunch of us did a test. The rest of Australia was working on Foot Flats, that animated thing.
Yes.
So I just basically, me and a handful of other guys, but I ended up doing about 80% of it, I think. Did the first test for Disney, and they liked it, and next thing they came out and took over basically the whole Hanna-Barbera staff.
Right.
And, that's how it started. And then we were doing Winnie the Pooh at first, doing all Saturday morning stuff, won Emmys for that kind of thing.
Yep.
It was all fun and games.
So were you based in Australia the whole time this was happening? Or?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I
mean, I've been overseas for work and stuff, but at that particular time, it was all based in Sydney.
Yeah, sure. So if we kind of obviously move away from the Disney kind of part of it and look at your animation technique, I mean, who's been your key influences in the industry, do you think?
The two guys whose animation I really liked was Tex Avery, but that was like from the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
I worked on Ren and Stimpy as well, so Ren and Stimpy was pretty much that exact style.
Yeah, I so loved Ren and Stimpy growing up. That was like my I kind of like an SpongeBob SquarePants like today is a bit like the Ren and Stimpy, of our current generation. Yeah, it's got that kind of wacky out there kind of style of animation. It's
colourful and snappy.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. If there's one style of animation that you gravitate to, what would that be, and why is that?
Yeah, I no particular style really. Just whatever you do, try to do it beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's worth people's time to look at it. In the end, so it's makes life a little bit worth.
Yeah. I guess so. So
something out of it. Something you got to put a bit of something of yourself into everything.
Yeah.
So it's got some humanity to it rather than it's a dying thing these days, which is
it's such a shame. Like I've always been a massive fan of stop animation myself. Like I absolutely whenever I see that on the screen, I instantly transfix and kind of and watching it. I love that stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now you're talking. You can't beat that. The old Ray Harryhausen stuff is awesome.
It's a bit like that in that it's you look at it and you think it's bad, but it's actually great.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you get what I mean.
I do. I absolutely do. I just noticed something you just said about you've got to put a bit of your soul, I guess, into it to humanize it, and that to me sounds like a massive metaphor for what Musclecar is about. The lead character is physically, but with the help of the guy in it, is offing these people in order to make her dream machine live and breathe.
Yeah. Put a soul in it.
Putting her soul in it.
Life has no soul. She's been sort of put through the ringers and feels let down, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
The whole reason it's called Musclecar is because she puts her heart in it to give.
Yeah.
But that's the muscle.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great. Let's talk about Musclecar, like we already are, but let's talk about it a bit more. This is your feature debut as a director, but how would you personally describe the film to listeners out there?
I'd just say it's way better than you think.
Right.
It's just a silly hoot that, like, if I had to pigeonhole it into a category, into a genre, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I try to think of all the things I've never seen in a film that if you had to do cheaply, what could you do?
Yeah.
And it's not so much to do with the cheapness of the idea or throwing money in front of the lens. It was more to do with how can you make something that people couldn't almost knock because it knocks itself just by existing.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, how did you find that kind of transition, though? To moving into the director's chair. Did you find that an easy thing to pick up? I mean, you were talking about this being the first time you've directed live footage as well. With real actors.
I directed a lot of commercials that had everything in it, like real kids.
Yeah.
And then animated characters and some 3D stuff sometimes. So obviously, normally when I'm animating, I don't have to compromise. The characters on the page do exactly what I tell them.
Yeah.
But that was the only difference. But a lot of people had good input, so
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So the only difference really was that to sort of let go a bit and let people do what they knew best for themselves to make it, so their performances were better or whatever. So
yeah.
So but it's like I said, it's so much easier than drawing the whole thing.
Yeah.
There was a few scenes we couldn't do just based on time and budget and availability of certain things, which I ended up drawing those sequences.
Yeah, because there is, there is animation in the movie, that done in a very kind of comic book kind of style format, kind of nice, fast, snappy kind of shots, which kind of tie those scenes together, as you said.
One sort of rule that I kept in my head for Musclecar, but especially writing the script, was that treat it like a comic book. But you've only got a little balloon. That's where you've got to put all the characters' dialogue in that balloon to get the point across.
Yes.
And so it's really sharp, straight to the point. There's not much beating around the bush dialogue in Musclecar. It's like everything moves the story very direct.
Yes.
It's a bit like the characters are meant to be comic book characters. They're not, you know what I mean? They're a little...
Yeah.
It's not that they're shallow. It's just that they're straight to the point. Because, like I said, you don't have.
Yeah. But it's in keeping with the theme of the film as well. It has a beat, a pulse that keeps pushing on. So, sorry, say again.
Yeah, it actually had to be the strength of the film, so that it never became like this silly idea.
Yeah,
it works better as a silly idea if it is on purpose.
Yes,
that the characters don't stop and dwell on anything. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we spoke about this off record, but there's a huge nod to like the grindhouse genre and Ozploitation as well. Was this an obvious or a natural fit in your style of direction at all? Like, was that something you were aware of taking it on, or did it take on that style as you were going through the shooting process?
No, it was always in the back of my mind to make it look as dark. Originally, it was going to be like a dark horror film, a lot more gruesome stuff.
Yeah,
but it just became. We just didn't have the budget to do some of the things that we wanted to do, Like there's a lot of actual the original script that are full on, but it's in the end it just became it'd be better to do something funny.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mean, like just say no if you don't want to. But is there an example of something like you just said with that you had to kind of cut back on because of the budgeting? Can you give an example of?
Well, a lot of the horror sequences and things that we wanted to do to dress certain things and hang people upside down and cut their throats so all the blood would run out. Just weird things that will end up being, it's not so much the cost to do that, but the cost to be allowed to do that. Like you've got to pay for other things that have to be there that, like a $500 an hour or something. I mean,
yeah.
That's like cheap by Hollywood standards.
Yeah.
But,
if I can just quickly chip in there and give you an example, there's
do Aaron, do yep.
There's a sequence where when you watch the film, Dwayne draws the car, and in the boot of the car there's this huge hydraulic thing with spikes on it. So the idea was that you put bodies in the boot of the car, they mush the bodies up, and then the blood gets fed through to the engine.
Yeah, it was Bandy sort of messing around with all different ways of how can she make this thing practical.
We just couldn't afford to have I've got guys who I can get to build that type of rig, obviously not real for a film, but those things cost a lot of money, so that when you look at it on camera, you go, that thing looks real. That thing looks like it would crunch someone in the boot of the car and she drives around and she does things. And there were just elements like that we couldn't do. And that's obviously another reason why you know, Dwayne ended up animating as much as he did because we just didn't have – we wanted to do a full car chase sequence. We couldn't afford to do that because we didn't have the budget to block roads off across Sydney.
Private cars cost nothing, but it's all the other stuff that you've got to pay.
So it became easier to have the car chase sequence, even though we shot a whole lot of stuff. The climax of that sequence becomes something that was animated. Now, we've made that work because Dwayne's a phenomenally brilliant animator.
Yes.
And he could make that stuff come together. It's fabulous. I don't know many people out there that are fortunate enough from a producer point of view to have a director who can physically just sit down and go, well, I don't need to pay someone. I'll just sit down and animate it. All the opening title sequence as well as all the comic book panels and all that sort of stuff. And it's a huge personal signature input that he's put in on the film because
Absolutely.
As a producer, I wasn't able to raise, the $1 million that we needed, like most filmmakers need to make a film.
And then it was the beauty was that we could, still entertain people without throwing money in front of the camera. Like, look at all this money we're filming.
Yeah.
People come out of Star Wars and whatever movies and just go, well, that was not good. $100 million budget or whatever.
Yeah.
In the end, it's like, well, what are people really looking for? It's not really so much to do with the money. So I think we worked around that all right.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing, like, we were saying about having to. Did it feel though that you had to have two hats on in order to do that though, Dwayne? Like, or is it?
Just made up,
Yeah, for sure. So, what time frame were we looking at? For the actual production?
We started pre-production because we're going back a few years now in January of 2010.
Yep.
And we ended up shooting in basically 14 days in March.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 months to set it up. And there was just a combination of, just backpedaling briefly, the reason why we ended up making Musclecar is because we had other projects. Dwayne's written other projects that we tried to fund, not big budget things, modest budget things.
Like full-on films, like full-on.
But what ultimately ended up happening is when Dwayne sat down and said, hey, I've got this idea for a film. It's about a car that runs on blood, chick, blah, blah, blah. I said, this is an idea that I can make.
Yes.
As in, as a producer, I know I can pull. When he told me this is what happens, scene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I thought, all right, I can actually make this. I can get the people together. I can get the funds together. I can get a whole range of things together. It's going to be very tight.
Yeah.
But we'll be able to pull this off. And what we're able to do is chop it down into chunks. The shooting bit was one chunk. The post-production process was another chunk. And within that, the sound was another chunk and all the animation was another chunk. And we just did that over a number of years.
Yes.
Paying for different things and then going back and revisiting and deciding we don't quite like this, we need to redo that, we want to re-edit this. So we didn't just want to put out any old thing.
Yeah, yep.
What we didn't do was set up any type of artificial time frame to say this is when the film's going to be delivered. We didn't put it on IMDb. We didn't race out with a website. We didn't email everybody. We just sort of thought we're in control of this.
Yep.
Let's not put a gun to our head. Let's make it that as painful as the process at times was, purely because of the amount of time it soaked up. And there are people who are part of the cast and crew who are going now, far out, I can't believe you actually finished this. Guys, before this film started, I wasn't a dad. Now I am.
Yeah, wow, okay.
Stuff like that, so it's...
Your kid got its license now.
Yeah, she does, yeah. That's how long this film takes.
License.
Nice.
So look, we were, I knew my role was to try and give as many tools to...
There was a few tools involved, wasn't there?
There were. To the director and the rest of the production that we could get across the line. And, really happy with the performance of our cast, really happy with the performance or the work of our very small dedicated crew.
Yep.
And, it was very much a labour of love. And we've got a lot of people who have supported us through this whole process, and we're really excited to be in a night of horror. And we were at Muff last month, and there's genuine interest bubbling about what we're trying to achieve and what's happening. There are other great filmmakers in Australia all doing a similar type of thing. We're all trying to build something at the moment, a new way of Aussie cinema. And you're right, it does come from horror.
Yeah, and that's what I'm finding really exciting. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. You only need to look at what, like, this coming, where are we now? So at the time of record, it's a week away. There's Monster Fest that's coming up in Melbourne, and there's a lot of Australian kind of films that are featured within that. And then literally the week after that, which is, as we mentioned, a night of horror in which Musclecar is featuring too. And there's at least 3 or 4 kind of Australian films that are within the horror realm that's in that festival as well. And I think it's a really exciting time. Like, the likes of like Greg McLean, with Wolf Creek, along with Jennifer Kent with the Babadook and things like that. There's this kind of new opening up, like you said, a new wave of what I feel of Australian horror films that are starting to come out.
And don't forget James Wan and Lee Winnell, who sort of forged with the Saw series, and now done Conjuring and other things.
Absolutely. I don't mean to neglect him. He's obviously like so entrenched in the Hollywood scene these days. But yeah, go back to, what was it, 2005, I think, when the first Saw film came out. There's just been a great kind of history of films coming out of Australia. And what's really important is that they're transcending across the pond as well. Like, there are people across the seas that are taking note of this as well, it's an exciting time. I mean, I guess this is a good point too, to kind of, bring Musclecar back into the conversation. There's a lot of the imagery that's in there, bring to mind like films like, Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof, and even John Carpenter's Christine, being the classic kind of car. Are there any images that you had in mind when you were coming up with creating Musclecar yourself?
What I was trying to do was try to definitely not do what's been done before. So the normal way to lean is to, let's do a movie about a car and it comes to life and it kills people. It's like, well, there's so many parts in Musclecar that people will go, I would have done this or I would have done that. And I was aware of that, so I didn't. Like, there's so many things that you could cliche do, that the obvious next step. So you take people up to a point, give them that delicious moment, and then, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's more entertaining. It'll put more of a smile on your face than just nodding. You know what I mean? Like, I knew they were going to do something. Like any other car movie where you just know what's going to happen, where it's basically Jewel or Jaws, or it's a car or a shark or a truck.
I mean, the car certainly is a character.
Yes.
It's an important character in the film.
Yeah, the beauty is it was just as character has a movie that she goes and buys the car to put that car in her movie.
Yeah.
As the car that would have been more of a killer car than what was.
But I liked the whole kind of movie within a movie thing that was going on within the script as well. Like, there's points where there are characters that are self-referencing, so it's it was a really clever piece.
And say write about what you know. So I made Jacinta's character write about what she knew based on I created her to know that. So she was writing about her, what she had, her car and stuff. And
cool. So, you're talking about the car being a character. I mean, you're right. It does remind me of Frankenstein's monster in a way. That it is created originally, and then the creature itself starts gaining a personality of itself. And it's a definitely cool thing.
It's all there for the sequel, mate. That's all.
That's it. Wow. So the sequel will be Bride of Musclecar, or
I don't know.
Yeah.
Point.
I want you to.
Helping us write it, mate.
The card.
I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
No, gets married.
That's it. Australians do have a strong connection with cars, is what I was going to say. What is it about our nation that is lured by these beasts? You know, the love of the machine.
Well, basically, I look at cars because I've written a lot of car movies because, you know, they're just...
And I've read them.
Your car is your family dog that can kill you.
Yeah.
So, or kill other people. But it's this big friendly thing that everyone has. Everyone can relate to it.
Yep.
But it's as dangerous as hell. So it's that beautiful mix of there's good and bad in everything.
Yes.
That you can sort of milk the bits you want to make it so it's, I don't know, people can sort of relate. I guess that it's not such a weird thing that people are too distanced or you're not isolating anyone by making a movie about a car because everyone's, you know, got one and they know.
Yeah.
It's an easy device, you know.
It is. Yeah, that's true.
So that's great. It's not like an iron or something, steam iron. But in the book, the Voodoo Mechanics, I don't know if you noticed on the cover, there's a sewing machine.
Yeah. I do know you've mentioned it, yes.
Heart on a sewing machine and give it a life, you know.
We love cars in this country, like most westernised countries.
And we used to have road rules that were a lot pretty lax, and all the cars used to be muscle cars that you could buy a GTHO Falcon, drive it out of the showroom, and you know, we'll stand the thing.
Yeah. Look, there is a sense of I've written here. There's a sense portrayed within Musclecar that there is a fine line between man and machine. Is this a subject that you knowingly wanted to explore, or did that become apparent in creating the film?
Well, no, yeah, based on, like I said, if I was going to do the cliche type of film where the car really does, it's about the car being alive and doing stuff. I mean, there's been a few movies like that as well, so I didn't want to try and...
Yeah.
So that fine line for me was like, even little things like, I don't want to give too much away, but where the car's starting to develop a soul and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You do little things like a light coming on or off to show that it's starting to get a life of its own, but I didn't want to do any of that kind of stuff because that's pretty much what everyone would expect.
Yeah.
You should have done this, should have done that. It's like, well, now it's more of a surprise.
Not a surprise if you're currently listening to the fabulous Surgeons of Horror podcast.
I mean, sometimes it's that less is more thing as well that kind of it's easier to transcend that message across, isn't it? So,
yeah, and each viewer has their own line in their mind that they will go to, and everyone's got a different one, and you let them take it right to that point themselves.
Yes,
because they can read something into something differently, and some people can handle things, some people can handle less. So, you give them that area where they can make it as great as they can imagine it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't do it for them, but lead them there.
Yeah, that's right. And then let their imagination kind of take
it in their own head as how good they want that scene to be. Well, it's up to them.
Yeah.
Their own head and see what they imagine is what we're doing, you know?
Yeah.
If you can do that, then you can make great films because people can't really criticise what they're imagining.
No, that's true. So the filming primarily was in Sydney's inner west. What were the biggest obstacles you found as a director? I mean, I think you kind of mentioned some of this already about certain action sequences that you weren't able to film, like the car chases and stuff. But was there any other kind of obstacles that you found in trying to create Musclecar?
I mean, not really based on a lot of the audio we redid. Obviously, with films, you do most of the audio later, but just certain things to do with the locations. Obviously, aeroplanes going over every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
People driving past, they see a camera, they yell out, so you've got to redo that cut.
Yeah.
I can say one. I can chime in right now because
go on.
We've got for anyone who's not familiar with American muscle cars, they're big. Our car is big. It's a Dodge Phoenix.
It's made in Australia. It's like a 68.
But it's massive. You could fit two cars in the size of the car that we had, right?
You can sit in it, not touch the person's shoulder right next to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big car. And the thing about it is that when Dwayne sat down with DOP, Daryl Martin, and other members of the production crew, and we talked about all the sequences and scenes that needed to be shot, because basically Bambi does a whole range of things with her car and with dead bodies in her garage.
Yes.
So we had to find a garage where we could fit the car but also have a garage where we could fit a crew in a car. It's one, and you know,
it wasn't right up against the,
you know, so to have all these different elements. So what we ended up doing is, I live in an apartment block in Redfern, and what we did is we ended up commandeering half the apartment block downstairs in the car park.
Yes.
And making it appear to be a garage
under the dentist,
under where she lived.
Yes. Yeah.
So that in the space that we had was actually a double car space in the bottom of the building that belonged to the penthouse units in my apartment block. And we just dressed that up and we made it look like a place where Bambi would park her car every day and do all the stuff. So from a logistics point of view, that, mate, we searched high and low until I went downstairs one day and said, we're shooting in like 2 days. We're shooting here. This is where I've lost interest in finding the ideal place. Yeah. Because you've got to think of toilets. You've got to think of places where makeup can do. We had blood. We had, you know, we've got to be able to destroy it and have crap going everywhere and guns and the whole range of stuff. And that was the biggest mind meld for me. To deliver a place so that these guys could do their thing. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
No, that's great because, like, do you know what? It strikes me because that was one thing that struck. That's the one thing that struck my mind when she first drove the car back to her place, and there's that shot of her driving it into the garage, and I kind of sat there going, "Oh, I'm glad she's got space for that thing." Like, you know, because that's a big fucking car.
You didn't hear a real garage at that house.
No.
Why didn't she have
I had to take the handles off to get the car in.
Once you have a passion for a Mini Cooper, mate.
Yeah. Could have got a truck heart.
Exactly. We could have got a plumber's heart and just done that.
Little thing.
Nice.
A bloody ox heart.
That's too good. Okay, so look, I'm just going to repeat for people out there that Musclecar is going to be screening at a Night of Horror Festival in Dendy Newtown. It's on Saturday, 2nd of December at 9 p.m. You've finally got this kind of baby out there, but what's next on the agenda for you guys? Is it shopping this out a bit more, or is there other things on the pipeline?
Our ideal thing is we've got a pile of movies that we want to do, and the big one obviously is we started off with the lowest budget one, just obviously for obvious reasons. But it doesn't mean it. I don't think it's like the cheapest film. It's because it's all about the ideas, and the ideas are free.
Yeah.
And also, I let other movies dictate what this will have in it based on let's not do what other movies have. So what haven't we seen yet? Like, and even it's just a stupid line that people will remember because they've never heard that line before in any film. No one's ever come up with that, and it's a memorable one. Yeah. The one the dentist says when he's looking under the bonnet.
Yeah.
Doesn't what's wrong with the car heart.
Yes, anyone interested in the film, please look up. We're on social medias and all that sort of stuff. We've yet to get a distributor on board, probably because we've been pushing out the whole film festival side of things. But
it's only been like 2 weeks now, isn't it?
So Dwayne and I have got, a number of, genre feature films. I certainly have to say they're genre films that, some of them do revolve around cars.
There's one called Speed Meatway where that will be the most full-on Australian horror film ever done, like ever. But same deal. It's a matter of budget. And it's a severe one, that one, but it's the same deal. It's very funny. But I have.
Give us you can't leave him hanging, mate. Give him a little taste.
So Speed Meatway is basically a pile of farmers that live in the outback.
Yeah.
Anyone that comes through their town, they arrest them for the smallest of crimes, like, you shouldn't park there. That's you got to be locked up for a week. You know what I mean? And you've got all these big, tough, heavy farmer guys, and they basically lock people away for a month. They get their car keys, their addresses and stuff, and go and loot them where it could be 500 kilometres away because these guys are in the bush,
Yeah.
And then they just live off all the stuff they keep from everyone else because there's no farms. The droughts killed them, and none of them want to move to a city or a town. They're actually nice blokes.
Yeah.
They don't want their kids to have to go to the city. They go, you don't want your kids to go up and around just play with computers all day and Anyway, so so they lock people up, and at the end of every month they strap into these Speedway smash-up derby cars and just smash the crap out of them. There's one guy in town keeps falling in love. Every time there's a new batch comes in, he falls in love with one of the girls.
Right, yeah.
This is the one, you know. But that's called Speed Meatway. So
it's a slight homage to the Cars That Ate Paris.
I was going to say, yeah.
Also it's like Wolf Creek times 100 because you know there's John Jarrett type characters. You know, and look, we got very close to actually funding that feature before Musclecar, and we just weren't quite able to get the deal done. And Musclecar was the film that came off the back of that. So it's sort of, you know, if you like Rob Zombie movies, if you like all those sort of very, you know, quite kooky out there type, you know, horror movies, then we've got a few sort of stacked up in the...
Yeah, I've got about 6 movies, written a couple of comedies, and I've got about 3 animated features that but I'd need big funding for that. But
yeah.
But years ago I made up an animated thing that was the Kung Fu Koalas. They get trained by a panda. I couldn't get funding anywhere in Australia for it. I rang DreamWorks.
I think I know where this might be going. Yeah.
Later they did Kung Fu Panda, you know. But I couldn't back it in Australia. So I do have a lot of what I believe are like pretty big world international style features, because that's all. I don't basically just think of doing movies for Australians. I honestly, that's why Musclecar could be anywhere.
Yeah. You can tell.
It's not about being location wise. It's an age old story that could fit in Shanghai. You know,
anything possible.
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, I think that's probably our time for the podcast, though. It's been really, really great chatting with you guys. I wish you every success with the release of Musclecar. And I am going to repeat it again for listeners that might be kind of catching this before the screening at the Night of Horror Film Festival in Dendy, Newtown. It's on Saturday, the 2nd of December at 9 p.m. Thank you very much, Dwayne, and thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate you.
And thanks for your interest in the movie.
For supporting us and for supporting Aussie movies, and good on you. I wish Surgeons of Horror all the best.
Yeah.
Onwards and upwards, my man.
I'll make another one for you.
Yeah, do. I'm hooked on, what was it, Speed Meatway? Sounds bloody great. Cool, right. Well, thank you very much, gents.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.